Hey, welcome back to video 3. So in this video for our last week, I've been mentioning that I had some handy tricks and techniques that I want to show you guys. So that's what I'll be doing this time around. So these are techniques that I use in quite a lot of my productions. And they're just things that I find really handy for my productivity and also my creativity in adding a little bit of extra flair into my tracks. So the first thing I'm going to show you guys is what I like to use a lot, and it's recording tracks into other tracks. So essentially taking already made MIDI tracks and audio tracks where you've got your effects and sounds on them, and you can record those into another fresh audio track in Ableton, so you can reprocess that over and over again. That's what we'll look at first. We'll jump into the arrangement view for this. So I've got this vocal up the top here. I'll just play this.
I don't wanna talk no more. I don't wanna talk. I just wanna hit the floor. I don't wanna talk.
Okay, so it's just a sample that I found online. Let's say on this vocal we had some effects on it. So I'm just going to throw, let's say, some overdrive, and I'll also pitch this down.
I don't wanna talk no more. I don't wanna talk no more. I don't wanna talk. I just wanna hit the floor. I don't wanna talk. I don't wanna talk no more. I don't wanna talk. I just wanna hit the floor. I don't wanna talk.
And then let's say I want to get crazy with it, and I'll throw a vocoder on. So I haven't introduced you guys to the vocoder. It's a little bit of a specific audio effect, especially if you want to get those Daft Punk style robotic vocals, you can use the vocoder to get that. I'm not going to jump into it in this course. If you are interested in learning more about how to get those robotic vocals, there's a lot of tutorials out there. And now that you have that fundamental knowledge, you can go out and figure out how to do all those cool effects that you're after. Essentially, you can use the vocoder in a few different ways. So if you have it on noise here, it's quite scary sounding.
I don't wanna talk. The floor.
Then you can change the dry wet as well for the amount. But I'm just going to have it on pitch tracking. So I just want a heavy effect on these vocals. So this already gives you that robotic effect. All we have to do is set it to pitch tracking, but you can do some extra, more in-depth effects once you set it to external, and then you have a like an external synth with an audio from, which will affect the vocoder. Like I said, I'm not going to show you guys that now. I just want to show you how the process that I use to record into other tracks. So I'm going to leave this on pitch tracking, change the formats as well. So I explained what the formats were when we did the sampling. So making the voice smaller here. Might just bring down the dry wet a touch. And I might put some delay on this as well. Just a really short delay, 16ths. So let's say I came up with something here, and I really like this, but I want to use this as a bass sound now. What I mean by that is I like how this sounds, and I want it to sound like this, but without all these effects on it. So I want this to become my new bass, where I can add more effects and work on it from there. So we can do that in Ableton. So what we do is we'll add another audio track down here, so an empty audio track. Then what we can do is, instead of external in here for our inputs, we can set this to whatever the track that we want to grab the audio from. So for this one, it's this audio track 1. I haven't named it properly. Let's just name it so we know what it is. That way, when we look in the inputs here, we can see exactly what we're looking for. So I've got the vocals. I'm going to select vocals. And now this second audio track here, this empty one, is grabbing audio from our vocals. Because it's doing that, all we have to do now is arm the track, and then we can hit record. And because this has information in it here, it's going to record whatever's playing whenever there's a sound coming from this vocal track. So I'll record slightly before as well so you can see it. So we arm our empty audio track, make sure our input's set correctly, and I'm just going to hit record up here. Okay, you can notice now that there was nothing recorded here because there was no sound playing here on this track. But once we started playing the vocal, it started to record exactly what was happening on the vocal track. So if I get rid of these plugins now, these audio effects on the original track, and we solo this one,
I don't wanna talk no more.
and we go back to our original transpose,
I don't wanna talk no more. I don't wanna talk.
we have our original vocal.
I just wanna hit the floor. I don't wanna talk. I don't wanna talk no more.
And then if I solo this bottom one here and play this, it's pitched down, it has all those audio effects on it, but if we look at the audio track itself, it's completely empty. So what we've done is we've basically baked out what we've done up here with all the audio effects and re-recorded it into a new track. That way it now sounds exactly how it was when it was processed, but there's no actual audio effects on it. So it becomes our new bass to work with. And we have our two versions still here.
The floor. I don't wanna talk no more.
So this is really handy if you want to take a sound, doesn't have to be a vocal, I'm just demonstrating on vocals here, but you can take anything you want, drums, synths, whatever it might be. You can twist them as much as you like. If you find something that you like, you can re-record it into a new audio track like this. That way, if you want to go back to the original sound, instead of having to turn off all the audio effects and possibly losing what you had, you can just bake it out into a new audio track, keep what you had there, and then go back to your original sound if you still wanted to work on that and twist it in another way. This way you can come up with multiple versions from the same sound, and you might actually want to come in and reprocess this. So now that we've got this as our new bass, so now I can come in and reprocess this. So I might want to pitch it up back to something close to what it was. So if I go up again on the transpose, and then we can process this even more from here. Let's say we have another overdrive on it. Now it's not even sounding like a vocal anymore because we've pushed it so hard. We baked it out and now we're reprocessing it again. We're essentially just twisting this vocal more and more until it sounds like it's to the point where it's not even a vocal anymore. So I can mess around with some other effects. Starting to sound like a wasp or a bee. And I can add something like a flanger on it. Flanger is quite a well-known effect and it's been used for quite a while, and I still use it in a lot of my productions. It's essentially, it creates two versions of the sound once again and then slightly offsets them, but in a different way. So I'll just demonstrate it. Move this around. So there's a lot of interesting little effects here that I haven't covered. I did want to cover the main effects in this course. So feel free to play around with some of these other ones like the amp, which essentially is a guitar amp. The cabinet is similar as well in that it replicates a small speaker. And then there's all other crazy ones like the frequency shifter. Phaser is really good as well. If you're a DJ, you'll definitely know what this is. And it's used quite a bit to fade in and out of tracks. And I'll just show you how that sounds. This one again essentially splits the signal into two and then does some kind of filtering and coloration on it to alter the sound. So again, you can move this little dot around to affect how it sounds. Probably be better if I use this on a sound that wasn't so processed, because we are starting to push this vocal quite far now, especially if we have both of these on. Show you on the original vocals, so I'll put a phaser on it.
I don't wanna talk no more. I don't wanna talk. I just wanna hit the floor. I don't wanna talk. I don't wanna talk no more. I don't wanna talk. I just wanna hit the floor.
Experiment with this on different sounds as well. It's not too prominent on these vocals, but just try the phaser on some drums or other synths that you have.
I don't wanna talk. I don't wanna talk no more.
It can give you some quite nice results. Same with the flanger. So I'll just show you this on these dry vocals.
I don't wanna talk no more. I don't wanna talk. I just wanna hit the floor. I don't wanna talk. I don't wanna talk no more. I don't wanna talk no more. I don't wanna talk. I just wanna hit the floor.
Yeah, it's definitely something to play around with on different sounds. It's not really that great on these vocals, on these dry vocals, but I think they're really useful on mainly synths, and you can mess around with them on drums as well. But yes, now we've taken our audio, our vocal, we've reprocessed it all again. We've essentially turned this
More. I don't wanna talk. I don't wanna talk no more.
into this. So it is quite crazy sounding. I just want to show you how far you can actually push sounds to the point where they don't even sound like their original self. So this barely sounds like a vocal anymore. It just sounds like a buzzing. You can still tell there's a vocal behind it, but we processed it that much that we've turned it into something completely different. So you can do this with any sound, but I just demonstrated it on these vocals here. So just remember that you do have this in your toolbox. Let's say in another way that we had some drums. Here I got this snare. I'm just going to grab a kick. And then something random.
The sounds. Hey.
Okay, so just a really random loop here. And then I might put a echo on this. The echo is similar to delay, but it works more like an actual echo. It can get quite messy quite quickly, so that's why I just prefer the delay. But yeah, feel free to play around with this as well. You got the timing on the left here. You also have some inbuilt reverb and other effects, filters, feedback. So let's say for some reason I really liked how this sounded and I wanted to bounce it out. Again, we can just create a new audio track. Then instead of external in here, I'm going to change this to our drum track. Going to arm the empty audio track, and then I'm going to start the playhead from about here. So I'm going to click here and record. Okay, I'm going to stop that there. Just going to get rid of the echo on this original one. And now if we even just look at the waveform, we can tell it's different to this, what we had originally, because we had that echo and we've actually baked it into the audio file now. It's information that's in the waveform in here. This is our original. And then our new baked form, which has the echo on it. And whatever else we want to do to it, that all gets baked into this. Then you can take this, you can then do whatever you want. If you wish to, let's say I had some effects on it that were doing some crazy things, you can create a MIDI track, drag this into it. So you can drag straight from Ableton into there. I think we did go over this before, but you can drag it straight in. And now we're essentially resampling. So if I turn my keyboard on, and then unsolo that, we now have it resampled in here. We can do the same with that vocal that we made as well. So this one that was really processed, we can take an empty MIDI track and then drag it onto it. And now we're sampling that. So I'm sure you can see now that the creativity is literally endless when it comes to music production in Ableton. You can just keep on twisting sounds and resampling them, processing them, baking them out, bringing them into another sampler. Let's say we want to record something in here. I'm just hitting some random notes just to show you. So we've got this. This beautiful sounding melody. What we're going to do is create another audio track, and we're actually going to bake this into an audio waveform. So we're going to take it out of the MIDI. So again, we just find that track. I'm not going to worry about renaming it, but we know it's 52 audio 00, this one here. I'm going to hit the arm button on here, and then I'm just going to record it. Okay, so we've taken this little MIDI chop that we did with our sampling, which we took from an already baked out audio file. We've resampled it into Simpler, and now we've baked it out again into another audio track from Simpler. So now we have this audio file down here. It sounds like this. And then you can resample this once again. So we can take the pitch it down, throw some reverb on it. Saturate it. And yeah, the possibilities are really endless when it comes to this. This is where the creativity really happens. In doing crazy stuff like this, you can stumble upon some sounds that you didn't know were possible. So you wouldn't have thought that this sound here would come from this.
I don't wanna talk no more. I don't wanna talk. I just wanna hit the floor. I don't wanna talk.
We've taken this really nice vocal and we've twisted it and morphed it into something completely different by just baking out over and over again and resampling it, reprocessing it to eventually end up with something like this. And if you heard this on its own in a track, you'd never think that this would be the original source.
I don't wanna talk no more.
So I just wanted to show you what was possible by, being able to reprocess and re-record things in Ableton and resampling. It's a really powerful technique, and it's how a lot of those producers come up with some really original sounding sounds. Because you can't get something sounding like this just by dragging your vocal straight into Ableton. We had to go through this entire process till we finally arrived to a sound like this.
I don't wanna talk. I just wanna hit the floor.
But I'm not saying that this sounds amazing or anything. You can, obviously, if you actually spend some time on it, creating something cool, you can get some really interesting sounds. I just wanted to show you what was possible by using these techniques. So now that we know about being able to reprocess audio tracks, I'm going to show you another cool technique that's used quite a lot in music production, in a lot of commercial tracks as well. And this technique here is called reverse reverb. So we know what reverb is, we know what reverb does, how it adds space to a sound and puts the sound into a room essentially. What we can do is take that reverb, bake it out and reverse it so it sounds like it's whooshing into the sound itself. Best way to explain this is obviously just to demonstrate it, but I'm going to do it on a vocal here because it really works well on vocals and it's used on vocals a lot in a lot of tracks. So once again, we have our vocal here.
I don't wanna talk no more. I don't wanna talk. I just wanna.
So instead of it coming out of nowhere, let's say this was in our track and we had a beat here, this was our intro, and then gets to the verse.
I don't wanna talk no more.
And she just starts singing.
No more. I don't wanna talk. I don't wanna.
We can have a reverse reverb before the vocal so that it eases into it a lot nicer. So I'll demonstrate that now. Take our vocal track, let's put a reverb on it.
I just wanna hit. I don't wanna talk no more. I don't wanna talk.
And then what we have to do for this to work is we have to reverse this audio file. So we can either double click this and hit rev here. Well, the shortcut for that is just to hit the R key on your keyboard and that will reverse the audio file. So now she's singing in reverse. The reason we're doing this is because we want to capture this initial vowel here. So you'll see why in just a minute once we get it all up and running. So depending on the type of reverse reverb that you want, you can tweak these settings. I always like to set the dry wet up to 100, and then I can play around with the decay time to get the effect that I'm after. So I might go for something a little bit longer here, 5 seconds. Okay, something like that. Now that we know about our being able to record into separate audio tracks technique, we can create an empty audio track here. I can take the audio from the vocals. I can hit the record button. And then I don't need all of this. I just want to capture this part here along with the reverb. So I'm going to hit record. When you're doing this, make sure you record long enough to capture the entire tail of the vocal as well, especially if you've got a longer reverb. You don't want to chop that off too early by stopping the recording. So if we listen to our recorded audio file now, what we can do with this is now we can reverse it once again. So we're re-reversing it back to its original form. And then we get this. So we get that really creepy, haunted horror movie effect. That's how they get this, is just by reversing it, adding a lot of reverb and then reversing it again. But we come back to our vocals up the top here. Let's get rid of the reverb. We don't need this anymore on here. And then obviously we need to reverse this to bring it back to normal. Turn it back on.
I don't wanna talk no more.
Turn off this snare.
I don't wanna
Now we've
talk
got
no
this vocal.
more. I don't wanna talk.
Exactly how it was.
I just wanna.
But now we have this here that we can play around with. So what you need to do with the reversed version is to just drag it before the initial vowel. And then you want to find the point on this one where the vocal starts playing out, and you want to just chop it off before there. So for me it's going to be, because we just want the reverb, we don't need that extra sound. Okay, so something like that. What I like to do with my reverse reverbs is to just drag them so that they overlap with the vocals just a touch. And then use the faders. So turn off our keyboard, hit the A key, and we can use these faders just to fade it out so that it has a smooth transition into the vocals. So if we listen to this now, let's see what we have.
I don't wanna talk no more. I don't wanna talk. I don't wanna talk no more. I don't wanna talk.
Okay, so that's working pretty well. Might just drag it in a little bit. Have this fade in even more.
I don't wanna talk no more. I don't wanna talk.
If you have too much of the word here, it can ruin the effect, so you just want to capture that reverb. Let's try and drag it right in.
I don't wanna talk no more. I don't wanna talk. I don't wanna talk no more.
Okay,
I don't wanna talk.
now we're getting that sweeping effect into our vocal.
I don't wanna talk no more.
I can guarantee you, if you listen to any music, that you've heard this 1,000 times, you probably just haven't noticed it. It's a really almost overused effect, but it does still work, and it's quite powerful, which is why it is used as much as it is. So you can add this into your productions as well.
I don't wanna talk no more. I don't wanna talk.
And while it is the most useful for vocals, it can be used on any sound. So I've got this snare down here. We can do the exact same thing. So I can reverse this. You can almost use this snare just reversed like this if you wanted to go into the snare. Like, just demonstrate that really quickly. You can always just do that with this, but to get it sounding a little nicer, we can do the same reverse reverb effect. So I'm going to put a reverb on it, dry wet up to 100. And for this one, I do want something slightly shorter. Yeah, 1 second will do. Create another audio track. Set the input to my drums. Make sure I arm the track, and then just record this. Okay, so I've got that. Let's listen to what I got down here. I can chop off this first part here. Come back to my drums, get rid of the reverb. Re-reverse this so it's back to normal. Then I can reverse this reverb again. Move it to the start here. And hold my command key just to get it perfectly lined up. And we'll see what we have. Yeah, now we have that sweep into the snare using the snare reverb. So this is the exact same way that you get those reverse crashes. A lot of them are just reversed. So you can take a crash cymbal and literally just reverse it and you'll get that effect. But if you do want this nice airy sweep, you can put a reverb on it and reverse it that way. So have fun with this. Make sure you, even if you're not going to use them that much, just do them anyway so that you get the experience out of it and you know how to do it. Because it is a really handy technique that you can use in pretty much any genre.
Another way that we can bake in our sounds instead of having to record them to another audio track is that we can actually freeze and flatten them. So if I take this little piano loop that I put in here, let me just throw some effects on it. Maybe a bit of overdrive as well. So if I was happy with this and I wanted to use this as a bass, or if I wanted to free up some CPU so that this track wasn't so intensive on my computer, I can actually freeze and flatten it as well. So the way we do that is we can just right click our track here, then we can come down to freeze track. What this does now is it actually freezes the entire track, the arrangement, so we can't edit this, we can't change it. I'm playing notes right now and we can't actually play anything because it's completely frozen. Even though this is frozen, it's still not baked in, so we can actually just unfreeze this and we'll get back to our original track and we can come back and edit it, do whatever we want to it. So if we want to flatten this down, we have to freeze the track. Once it's frozen, we have to right click again and we can flatten it. So I'm going to click this and there we go, it's turned into a waveform. Just be aware that once you do this, you can't actually go back to what you had unless you undo. So the only way I can go back now to this original piano, so to get it back to a MIDI track with all my effects, I just have to undo the flatten and then undo the freeze, and I'm back to my original track. So once you do this, it's permanent from now on. So if you freeze and flatten it and then you keep on working, you save your project file, you won't be able to get back to this MIDI track ever again. Which is why the other method of recording it onto a separate track might be more useful, in that you can actually keep your original sound or your original MIDI track if you wanted to go back and edit it, but you can also record the final processed output to another audio track. Another scenario that the freeze comes in very handy is if you're working on a track with a friend or collaborating with someone else. Let's say you have some third-party plugins, whatever it might be, and you've thrown them on your track, or you're using a third-party synthesizer and you want to send this project to your friend or collaborator and they don't have that same synth, if you don't freeze your track before sending it over to them, they won't be able to hear what's actually playing on that track because they don't have that plugin. So freezing it just sets it in memory, that way they can still hear what's going on. But if they actually want to edit it and unfreeze the track, they have to make sure that they have all the plugins that you have. So it has to be the same. But yeah, that's just another way to bake a MIDI track or a processed audio track into memory, or into waveform, sorry, just to freeze and then flatten it. Just be aware that once you do that, your original track is gone forever unless you undo. The last thing I'm going to show you in this video is something really cool when it comes to writing melodies and stuff like that, especially chords. So let's just take I'll grab a piano. I've got a piano here, my keyboard on. Just a standard Ableton piano. I'm going to insert a MIDI clip. Now let's say I'm playing around on my keyboard and I really like that chord. So if I want to figure out what that chord is, I know they show up on the left here. But if you wanted a way to actually insert this, what you can do is hold the notes. It is a little tricky if you're using two hands, but if you're on let's say like a MIDI keyboard, it's much easier. So let's say you found a chord here that you liked.
So you can just hold this chord down, and you do have to make sure that your headphone button is activated up here so it turns blue. Let me find that chord again. Okay, that was it there. So if I liked how this sounds, I can just click the playhead to where I want it. What I can do is hold the chord, and then all I have to do is hit the right arrow on my keyboard, and that will actually insert it as a MIDI note in there. So now I have this chord in. So I didn't have to record it in, and I didn't have to draw it in manually. I can just hold down the chord, make sure my playhead is set to where I want it by clicking in the note editor here. And I can change it. I can just hit the right arrow and keep on inserting all my chords. So I'm just hitting random ones here. And yeah, you can draw in your notes that way as well. This way, if you find something on your keyboard that you like, you don't have to memorize it and then draw it in manually with your mouse here. And you also don't have to come up here and record it in and memorize the exact pattern. You can just play the chord on your keyboard, make sure your headphone icon is on, and then hit the right arrow and it will insert that. You can keep tapping it as well just to make it as long as you want. But yeah, that's another one that you might find handy, especially if you do a lot of melodies and chords. It's just a neat way to add them in without having to memorize it. Well, that pretty much does it for this video. I hope you found these useful and that you can use these techniques in your own productions. I do encourage you guys to get as creative as possible. So just remember that you do have these new tricks in your tool bag when it comes to creating your tracks. What we're going to look at in video 4 for week 10 for our last week is we're going to jump into some plugins that I find really useful. So if you have been thinking about spending a little bit of money on some extra plugins for Ableton, I'm going to introduce you guys to some handy ones that I use quite a lot and ones that will give you the best impact for your dollar, essentially. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and when you're ready, we'll jump into some plugins.